I'm Chance Storland, and this is The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com, brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. About a month ago, a San Antonio businesswoman went missing and is believed to be dead. And her husband, a U.S. Air Force officer, has been arrested and charged with tampering with evidence after authorities investigating her disappearance found items at the couple's far north Bexar County home that investigators say could have been used to destroy evidence of a crime. I'm joined now by Express News courts and crime reporter Elizabeth Zavala to learn more about this ongoing case. So, Liz, great to have you back here on the podcast. As always, let's start with more details on this woman who's still missing at this time.
Yes, Chance, this is a really intriguing case in the Bexar County area. 29-year-old Andreen McDonald, who was a San Antonio businesswoman, was reported missing after she did not show up for work. Now, she was last seen February 28th, and that night she is said to have been arguing with her husband, U.S. Air Force Major Andre Sean McDonald. He's 40 years old, and he's assigned to a cyber warfare unit at Joint Base San Antonio, Lackland. He was booked on a charge of tampering with or fabricating evidence because he had torn up a receipt for the purchase of a shovel, an axe, gasoline, a metal barrel, and other material that investigators believe he might have used to dispose of his wife's body. So although he hasn't been charged with anything other than the tampering with evidence charge, McDonald's bail was set at $2 million. And the judge here has now lowered his bail to $300,000.
We'll talk more about that reduction in bail here in a moment, but something you just mentioned sounds very suspect. You know, this sounds like it came right out of a television show or a movie. A shovel, axe, gasoline. What else did they find?
Well, Bexar County Sheriff's deputies searched the couple's home twice, and during these searches, they recovered Andreen McDonald's purse, wallet, keys, what seemed to be like her cell phone. They couldn't find her passport, and interestingly, they also found a burn pit in the backyard that actually had some items in it, and there were just a lot of things. When this hearing occurred, there were a lot of things that were shown as evidence to the judge that, as you mentioned, some could say, this was definitely used to cover up a crime. And, both the McDonald's have ties to Jamaica, and investigators actually contacted family members in the Caribbean who told them that Andreen McDonald was not there because at some point, sheriff's deputies had heard that, she possibly might have left. But even working with the FBI, authorities have no evidence that she even left the country. This is according to Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar. So after obtaining that second search warrant for the house, they said that they were able to see what they thought was evidence in plain view, including blood. Now, the sheriff said FBI agents were assisting with searches of the McDonald's vehicles also, and they had a bunch of them on the property. So the search also turned up, as we've discussed so far, a shovel and an axe and some heavy-duty trash bags and some work gloves and 2 5-gallon containers of gasoline and, the burn pit, as I mentioned, and also a portable burn pit or a burn barrel. So when you take all of those things and you put them together, Sheriff Salazar told the Express News that, this led his department to believe that all of those implements were going to be used to get rid of a body. So because of all of that, the sheriff's department is operating on their thought that they believe Andreen McDonald is deceased.
And so I assume that's why the original bail was $2 million, but from $2 million to $300,000, that's quite a drastic decrease, though, of course, $300,000 is no small amount either. What does this change mean when it comes to actually having to pay an amount of money to get out of jail?
Well, Chance, for instance, the $2 million bail, the reduction means that instead of having to come up with $200,000 bond to be released, which is the 10% of the $2 million bail amount, McDonald can now be freed basically by putting up $30,000 bond. So that is significantly lower. But what was revealed at the bond hearing was that the McDonalds each shared equal ownership in a business that's worth $1 million. And as an officer in the U.S. Air Force in a specialized field, Andreen McDonald was grossing about $10,000 a month. And this was what was established by testimony at this hearing. And they also owned homes and cars, the homes in Texas and some out of state because he was in the Air Force. So he's basically stationed, he's buying houses in places where he's stationed and cars. So they owned homes and cars that were valued at more than $1 million. So paying a high bond might not be as difficult as one might think for them, which is probably why prosecutor Samantha DeMayo fought to keep the bond at $2 million and for Andreen McDonald to stay in jail to await his indictment, because they also considered him to be a flight risk, though his passport was confiscated, according to testimony. So McDonald's attorney, John Convery, fought the high bond because it didn't fit the charge, and he called it excessive. Now, he told us that he had hoped for a reduction to about $50,000 or $75,000, which would fit more in line with the charge of tampering with evidence. But in any event, Judge Castro did reduce that down to $300,000. And as of Thursday evening, Andreen McDonald appeared to still be in the Bexar County Jail. So he is either looking at his assets and trying to see if he can get that $30,000, turned over so that he can be released, or it's probably a combination of that and also the fact that it takes time to fill out a bunch of paperwork. Once you've gone to jail and you're getting out on bond.
Let's pivot now back to this missing Bexar County woman who has really received a lot of help from both the police and the community when it's come to searches, right? There's been quite a lot of searching going on, especially within the first week of her disappearance, correct?
Yes. As part of the search for Andreen McDonald, the Bexar County Sheriff's Office used social media to circulate photos of 3 vehicles. They asked anyone who had seen them, in what they called, quote, a remote area or driving suspiciously, to contact authorities. They were also searching wooded areas along U.S. Highway 281 in North Bexar County and had set up a mobile substation along Overlook Parkway as part of the investigation. And, that station would welcome members of the public who wanted to help as well. They also scoured creek beds and drainage ditches and ravines with cadaver dogs looking for Mrs. McDonald. And they also went to Camp Bullis, an area around where it's another one of these joint reserve bases where, Andrea McDonald actually had access to a place like that. There was a search that went on there as well. So meanwhile, the couple have a 6-year-old daughter, and she is being cared for by a relative. Now, Sheriff Salazar said authorities haven't yet questioned the child, but it is said that the child is autistic and is mostly nonverbal. But, all of that's been going on. I mean, this has been something that, was going on prior to this bond reduction hearing that happened this week. But they are still trying to find out any information that they can on the whereabouts of Andrea McDonald, who again was a business owner. She owned a health care company, and was also very fit, 29 years old, and if you were to see photographs of the couple together, they are both very, very youngish and very fit individuals. So they are just really encouraging people who either have information or who want to help out in the search, or just who might have any information at all to contact the Bexar County Sheriff's Office at 210-335-6070, or email missingpersons@bear.org, or bcsotips@bear.org. And hopefully somebody knows something or has seen something, and this will maybe give authorities a little hand in the search.
And so, Elizabeth, we have a missing woman who authorities presume to be dead. Her husband remains in custody, as you've mentioned. What's next in this case?
Well, he is going to be in jail until he can reach that particular bond, which, his attorney and prosecutors are thinking that he's going to be able to make that bond. And I didn't mention this, but part of the stipulations of him getting out on bond, he's got some restrictions. He's going to be on GPS monitoring. He's going to be on house arrest and only be allowed to go to and from home and work. And he's not going to be able to have access to the property where authorities believe, a crime could have been committed. And also, he is not going to be able to have access to or see his daughter. So, once he has his bond paid, he's going to be on GPS monitoring, and he's going to be having to, follow all of those restrictions. So at this point, Chance, the next thing that happens in this case is there is a pre-indictment hearing scheduled for sometime at the end of April in the 399th State District Court, where Judge Frank Castro will be presiding over this case. So if Air Force Major Andre Sean McDonald goes to trial on the tampering with evidence case, or if he is accused of or charged with something else, Frank Castro will definitely be presiding over this in his courtroom. So I would say stay tuned on this.
And thank you to San Antonio Express News courts and crime reporter Elizabeth Zavala for joining me for today's episode of The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com. Brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. For the San Antonio Express News, I'm Chance Storland.